I walked into the grand ballroom in my soft pink dress, feeling invisible. Then she laughed, sharp, cruel, the billionaire's mother. "Dance this waltz and I'll give you $200 million, she mocked. Everyone laughed at me. But tonight, I wasn't just dancing for money, I was dancing to prove them all wrong. Before we begin, hit like and subscribe. Watch closely as Zoe, a simple waitress, faces cruelty, laughter, and family drama, but shows courage and skill that leaves everyone speechless. I wake up every morning to the sound of my alarm buzzing like it's competing with the city itself. My tiny apartment smells faintly of coffee and old books, and the sunlight sneaks in through the thin curtains, painting the walls a soft golden hue. Most people would call this life ordinary, predictable even, but to me, it's everything I have. I slip into my uniform, a simple pastel dress, and tie my hair back, pulling myself together before stepping out into the busy streets. The world doesn't wait for anyone, and neither do I. Walking to the cafe where I work, I pass familiar faces, street vendors shouting their deals, joggers with headphones lost in their own worlds, children laughing as they chase after stray pigeons. I smile at a few of them. Small gestures, I know, but they remind me that even in the routine of life, there's warmth to be found. Inside the cafe, the smell of freshly baked bread and steaming coffee hits me like a gentle hug. I nod at the regulars who have already settled into their corners, their morning rituals intertwined with mine. I love my job most days. Serving tables, filling orders, keeping up with the relentless pace. It's simple, honest work. Yet, as I wipe down the counter or balance a tray of drinks, there's a whisper in the back of my mind that I can't ignore. Dance. That one word hums in my veins like a secret heartbeat, a quiet reminder of the life I've only glimpsed through old videos and late-night television shows. Waltz, tango, foxtrot. I've practiced in my bedroom, in the tiny space I call my sanctuary, letting the music guide my every step, imagining a world beyond these walls where I am more than just a waitress. I glance at the clock. Another rush begins, and my hands move automatically, pouring, serving, smiling. But every now and then, between orders and clinking cups, my mind drifts to that dream. I can feel it in my muscles, in the way my feet long for the polished floors and grand halls where people move with elegance and confidence. I imagine the music swelling, the lights dimming, and me, spinning in a soft peach gown, every motion precise and alive. It's a fantasy that I've carried alone, tucked away like a secret jewel I can't yet show the world. Evenings are quieter. After the cafe closes, I walk home under the fading sky, my thoughts tangled with what-ifs, and maybe someday. My family doesn't know the full extent of my dream. They smile politely when I mention dance, nodding as though they understand. But I can tell they see it as just another hobby, a fleeting passion. I love them too much to push, too much to risk disappointment. So I practice in silence, barefoot on the creaky wooden floor, letting the music in my head fill the room. Sometimes I fall, sometimes I trip over the rug, but I always get back up, letting my determination carry me further than anyone can see. There's a quiet power in these ordinary moments, in folding napkins just so, in balancing coffee cups, in stealing a few seconds to twirl in the dim light of my apartment. I tell myself every night, one day, someone will see me, not as a waitress, not as a girl with a simple life, but as someone capable of beauty, grace, and audacity. And when that day comes, I'll be ready. Until then, I live in the rhythm of ordinary days, but my heart beats to a waltz all its own, a dream waiting for the right moment to step into the light. I was stacking clean plates when I saw the invitation slip under the cafe's glass door. At first, I thought it was a mistake. My hands froze mid-motion as I picked it up, my name scrawled in elegant looping letters across heavy cardstock. Zoe, you are cordially invited to the Sterling Gala. My heart skipped, then sank. This was the kind of event I'd only ever seen in magazines. Chandeliers, gowns, champagne towers. The Sterling family was legendary not just for wealth, but for their influence, their power, and their reputation for cruelty. I held the invitation like it might burn me, the gold embossing catching the sunlight streaming through the cafe window. Part of me screamed to throw it away, to laugh at the absurdity, but another part, a stubborn, aching part of me that had always dreamed of dance, whispered, "This is your moment." I tucked the card into my apron, pretending nothing had happened while my fingers trembled. For the rest of the day, I moved mechanically. Every cup I poured, every order I served felt heavier, weighed down by anticipation and fear. My co-workers noticed my distracted smile, but I waved it off. None of them could understand. No one had seen the endless evenings I spent practicing in my tiny apartment, barefoot, spinning to the music that only I could hear. Tonight wasn't just about attending a gala, it was about stepping into a world I had always admired from the outside, a world that could crush me with a single glance. Evening came too quickly. I stood in front of my mirror, staring at my reflection. My dress was soft peach, simple but elegant, the fabric flowing just enough to hint at movement without screaming wealth. I tied my long hair into a loose braid, letting a few strands frame my face. No one had given me a makeover. No one had whispered, "You can do this." It was all me. A small breath, a shake of the shoulders, and I whispered under my breath, "You belong here. You have a right to be seen." The streets leading to the Sterling estate were lined with limousines and sleek cars, their headlights cutting through the night like slivers of gold. I felt every stare, every whisper of disbelief as I stepped out of my taxi. I was the odd one out. No designer heels, no sparkling jewelry, just a simple waitress with a dream and a beating heart. I could feel the judgment like a weight pressing down on my shoulders, and yet I walked taller, my chest lifted, determined not to shrink under the scrutiny. Inside, the ballroom was more breathtaking than I had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars, and the polished floors reflected every shimmer of light. Guests glided past me, dressed in gowns and suits that whispered of fortune I couldn't even fathom. And then I saw her, the Sterling matriarch. She was the embodiment of power and cruelty, the kind of woman whose smile could slice through confidence and leave it bleeding on the floor. She scanned the room, and her eyes landed on me. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. "This is going to be fun," I thought, my stomach tightening. Her voice carried across the room before she even reached me. "Ah, the little waitress who wandered in." How quaint. Laughter followed, sharp and echoing. My heart pounded. I wanted to shrink into nothing, disappear into the polished floor beneath me, but a spark of defiance rose within me, tiny but stubborn. I clutched the edge of my dress and held my chin high. I may be simple. I may be small in their eyes, but tonight they are going to see me. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him, the billionaire himself. Handsome, poised, his gaze curious, unassuming, and yet it seemed to measure more than just appearances. My pulse quickened. Maybe, just maybe, he could see past the whispers, past the laughter, past the cruel glare of his mother. The game had begun. I didn't yet know how high the stakes were or how sharp the cruelty would cut. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to leave this room without showing them the real Zoe. The room went silent for a heartbeat, and then the Sterling matriarch spoke, her voice slicing through the air like glass. Well, what do we have here?" A little waitress daring to step into my ballroom. How amusing. A cruel, slow smile spread across her face as she surveyed the crowd. All around me, glasses clinked, whispers floated, and I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing down on me. I wanted to shrink, to melt into the polished floor beneath my feet, but I forced myself to stand taller. Then she raised her hand, elegant and commanding, and announced, "Dance this waltz. Do it well, and perhaps I might reward you. Fail, and you will provide entertainment for all of us." Her laughter rang out, high and sharp, and the room followed suit. Guests whispered and chuckled, pointing at my simple peach dress, my bare wrists, my modest jewelry. Every chuckle, every sharp glance, every smirk felt like a blade against my confidence. I could feel my face heat up, my stomach twisting. I wanted to turn, to run, to escape this nightmare disguised as a gala, but something inside me stirred. Years of quiet practice, hours spent spinning alone in my apartment, had prepared me for this, more than anything else in my life ever had. I clenched my fists and let my breath settle. This is my moment. I am not a joke. I am not invisible. The matriarch's eyes glinted with amusement, and she leaned slightly toward the billionaire himself, whispering something I couldn't hear. I caught a glimpse of his expression, curious, almost playful, and completely unreadable. His gaze met mine, and for the first time that evening, I felt like someone in this room wasn't expecting me to fail. That tiny spark of encouragement steadied my nerves, and I straightened my shoulders. She clapped her hands once, loud and deliberate. "Come now, little one. Show us what you've got. Dance!" The room erupted into laughter again, and a few younger socialites sneered, betting with their whispers on how quickly I would stumble. Even the waitstaff who had snuck in to watch seemed wide-eyed, bracing for disaster. I took a slow, steady step onto the polished floor. My feet pressed against it cautiously at first, then with more confidence as I remembered every twist, every turn I had practiced in solitude. The matriarch leaned forward, scrutinizing every movement, and I could see the contempt etched into the faces of her family and friends. The whispers grew louder, crueler, feeding her delight. "You're just a girl from a cafe. You don't belong here. You're nothing." I could almost hear it echoing in my ears. But then the music started, gentle at first, swelling into a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second and let the music guide me. My body moved naturally, every step flowing from countless nights of practice, every turn precise yet elegant. Gasps punctuated the room as my confidence grew. I could see her expression falter, her perfect, cruel smile twitching at the edges. She had expected humiliation, yet here I was, graceful and composed, commanding the room without a word. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped forward, the billionaire himself. My heart lurched as he offered his hand. "May I?" he asked, voice calm, measured, but filled with a spark of amusement. The room murmured, some shocked, others intrigued. I took his hand, and together we glided across the floor. Every step, every lift, every turn told the story of someone underestimated, someone dismissed, someone daring to defy expectation. The mother's eyes widened, a flicker of fury crossing her face. The whispers turned to stunned silence, and in that moment, I knew. The game had only just begun, but I wasn't afraid, not anymore. The music swelled, and with his hand in mine, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The polished floor gleamed beneath us, reflecting the crystal chandeliers like 1,000 frozen stars. Every eye in the room was on me, but somehow, with his steady presence beside me, I felt a clarity I hadn't known before. I was no longer just Zoe, the waitress. They would see me as someone more, someone capable. I took a deep breath and let the rhythm guide my feet. At first, the steps were cautious, almost hesitant. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, matching the music, matching my resolve. The billionaire's hand was firm, yet gentle, his eyes never leaving mine. There was no judgment there, only curiosity and a quiet challenge, as if he wanted to see exactly how far I could rise. The matriarch's laughter had faded into a tense silence, and I could feel her eyes burning into me with incredulity. She had expected a disaster, a spectacle of failure, and instead I moved with grace. My turns were precise, my spins smooth, every motion flowing naturally, born of countless hours of practice in my tiny apartment. The whispers began, soft at first, then louder as the audience started to realize that I wasn't just surviving this challenge. I was captivating them. A flicker of fury crossed her face. I could see it in the tight line of her lips, the subtle narrowing of her eyes. She had always believed her wealth and status were enough to intimidate anyone, and here I was, a simple girl, proving otherwise. Her family, previously smirking and whispering behind their fans, now leaned forward, shocked at my poise. Even the younger socialites who had bet on my failure were biting back gasps, unable to tear their eyes away. With each step, each lift, each turn, my confidence grew. I wasn't just dancing to survive the humiliation anymore. I was dancing to claim my dignity, to show that no one had the right to define my worth. The billionaire matched me move for move, guiding me gently but never overshadowing me. There was a subtle electricity in our movements, a connection that was both professional and somehow personal. The crowd felt it too. Murmurs of admiration began to ripple through the room, replacing the earlier laughter. And then it happened. The matriarch's cruel smile faltered, twisting into a grimace. I could see the shock in her eyes as I completed a flawless spin, finishing in a poised stance, my head held high. The applause was instant, hesitant at first, then building into a wave of approval that echoed against the chandeliers. My chest heaved, a mixture of adrenaline, relief, and triumph flooding through me. I had done it. I had faced the ridicule, the whispers, the cruelty, and I had come out unbroken. He bowed slightly to me, a subtle acknowledgement of my skill and courage, and my heart skipped. In that gesture, I sensed respect, not pity, not amusement, but genuine recognition. The matriarch looked around, her face pale, her authority challenged in a way she hadn't expected. Her carefully constructed control over the room was slipping, and for the first time that night, I saw vulnerability in her eyes. I straightened my shoulders and allowed myself a small, quiet smile. This was more than a dance. It was a statement. I was no longer invisible, no longer the girl everyone assumed could be mocked without consequence. I had faced cruelty, humiliation, and skepticism, and I had turned it into triumph. The room was no longer laughing at me. They were seeing me, truly seeing me, and it was intoxicating. And in that moment, as the music faded into silence, I realized something important. This was only the beginning. No matter what came next, the threats, the whispers, the expectations, I had found a strength inside me that could not be taken away. Tonight, I had danced not just with him, but with my own courage, and I had won. The final note lingered in the air, a delicate echo of the music that had carried me through every step, every spin, every daring move. I froze for a heartbeat, letting the silence hang, and then the room erupted. Gasps, claps, whispers, some in awe, some in shock. I couldn't believe it. I had done it. I had faced the cruelest gaze in the room, the laughter, the whispers, and I had triumphed. The matriarch's face had drained of color, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected humiliation, a spectacle to amuse her and her guests, and instead, I had stunned them all. The sharp laughter, the whispers of mockery, they had vanished, replaced by astonishment, admiration, and, for her, a bitter sting. I could almost feel her fury radiating across the ballroom. Every ounce of her carefully cultivated authority was cracking before my eyes. And then he, my dance partner, the billionaire himself, stepped forward, bowing slightly in my direction. "You were incredible," he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made the entire room take notice. There was no teasing, no amusement, just respect, recognition, and something unspoken that made my heart flutter. I caught a glimmer of pride in his eyes, a rare, genuine acknowledgement that I hadn't expected. The crowd erupted again, this time louder, cheering, clapping, some guests even rising to their feet. I could feel the shift. No longer was I just a simple waitress in a peach dress. I was someone they could not ignore, someone who had turned their expectations on their head. My chest heaved with exhilaration, every nerve alive with triumph and relief. I had danced not just for money, not just for recognition, but for myself, and the room could feel it. The matriarch's gaze snapped to me, sharp and incredulous. "Impossible," she whispered almost to herself. Her daughter and son-in-law exchanged awkward glances, unsure of how to respond. The entire family had witnessed their carefully orchestrated ridicule unraveling before them. I could almost hear the unspoken words in the room. She won. She succeeded. She outshone them all. He extended his hand again, offering it with a slight smile, and this time it wasn't part of the dance. It was acknowledgement, partnership, respect. You have not only grace, but courage, he said quietly, leaning just enough so only I could hear. My stomach fluttered, a mixture of nerves and triumph. In that moment, I realized something profound. This was bigger than money, bigger than a challenge. It was about proving to myself that no one could define my worth. And then, as the applause reached its peak, a subtle but unmistakable change passed over the matriarch. She straightened, her pride bruised, yet somehow softened. The game she thought she controlled had slipped from her hands, and I had danced right through it, elegant and unstoppable. I let my gaze sweep the room, catching eyes of astonished guests, impressed staff, and even her own family, who now seemed unsure of where their loyalty should lie. I lowered my hand from his, letting it rest at my side. The music had ended, the challenge completed, and I had done more than survive. I had conquered. I had turned cruelty into awe, mockery into admiration, and doubt into undeniable proof of my strength. The applause swelled once more, washing over me like sunlight breaking through clouds. I felt alive, unstoppable, seen and heard for the first time in a life that had been quiet, simple, and often overlooked. As I took a small, proud bow, I caught his eyes one last time, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. No words were needed. I had faced laughter, humiliation, and expectation, and I had risen above it all. Tonight, I was not just a girl in a peach dress. I was Zoe, the girl who danced, who triumphed, who proved that courage and grace could shatter even the most rigid walls of cruelty. After the applause died down, I found a quiet corner of the ballroom and let myself breathe. My legs ached, my chest heaved, but my heart felt like it could burst. I had faced cruelty, laughter, and expectation, and I had come out unbroken, unshaken, and stronger than I had ever known. The matriarch's smirk had vanished, replaced by something I couldn't quite read, perhaps grudging respect, perhaps disbelief. But it didn't matter. I had danced for myself, and that was victory enough. I walked slowly toward the balcony where the night air was cool against my flushed skin. The city lights twinkled like a reflection of the chandeliers inside, a universe of possibilities stretching out before me. I allowed myself a small smile. This was more than a challenge or a performance. Tonight had shown me that courage could outshine cruelty, that dignity could outlast mockery, and that belief in oneself could carve a place in a world that didn't always make space for dreamers. He found me there, his footsteps quiet against the marble floor. The billionaire's eyes met mine, calm yet full of something I couldn't define. Admiration, respect, maybe even a hint of something warmer. "You were incredible," he said softly. I laughed quietly, a sound of relief and disbelief. "I nearly panicked," I admitted. "For a moment I thought I'd fail spectacularly." He shook his head, smiling. "You didn't just survive. You shone." There was a pause, a gentle stillness between us as the chaos of the ballroom hummed behind the glass doors. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel seen, truly seen, not as a waitress, not as someone insignificant, but as Zoe, a woman with skill, courage, and heart. It was a feeling I had never known in a room full of wealth and expectation, and yet it was entirely mine. The matriarch eventually approached, her expression unreadable. I straightened instinctively, ready for more mockery, but instead she inclined her head ever so slightly. "You handled yourself remarkably," she said, her voice clipped but not unkind. I nodded, a polite acknowledgement, and felt a strange sense of triumph knowing that she had no sharp words left to throw my way. Tonight, her power over me had dissolved. I had danced through fear, and she had witnessed it. I thought about my small apartment, my quiet evenings of practice, and the long days of serving tables. Every step I had taken, every hour of preparation had led to this moment. I had transformed my fear into art, my nervousness into grace, and my dream into a statement. I had claimed a space in a world that had tried to dismiss me, proving that even the simplest of people could leave a mark on the grandest of stages. He offered his arm, a silent invitation, and I accepted. Not just because of the dance, but because I realized something essential. Strength attracts respect, and respect invites connection. The applause, the whispers, the astonished faces inside the ballroom no longer held power over me. I had earned something far greater: self-belief, dignity, and the knowledge that I could stand tall against anyone who tried to belittle me. As we walked back into the ballroom together, I let my eyes sweep over the crowd one last time. They had watched a simple girl dance through fear and humiliation, and they had witnessed triumph. The matriarch's gaze lingered, perhaps begrudgingly impressed, and I realized with a deep, steady breath that this night had changed me forever. I had learned that courage isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, unwavering, and entirely your own. Tonight I was no longer invisible. Tonight I had danced, I had triumphed, and I had proved that no one, no matter how cruel or powerful, could define my worth. If Zoe's story amazed you, leave a comment and tell us your favorite moment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories of courage, family drama, and revenge against the odds.